This is the ESL Mobile Open, presented by AT&T.
Hello and welcome everyone to the ESL Mobile Open Season 5 Finals. As always, I'm your host, Paul Inverum Todkill, here to bring you all of the amazing mobile esports action. And oh boy, do we have a weekend in store for you. 4 games, 4 titles, 4 champions. I cannot wait to get into it. Let's get started. Why are we waiting anymore? Let's get started right now, of course, with Asphalt 9 Legends, but I cannot do it alone. I need an expert analyst, someone who knows all the cars, knows all the tracks, can give me all the details, the insights into these players. Of course, it's Ferrum back once again. It's been too long, good friend.
It has. Thank you so much for having me back on, Paul. Season 1 was an absolute blast, and I'm so excited for Season 5. I'm excited to see what these players have in store for us today.
I love it. We could drag you away from your studies for a day just to have you study the players, in fact, this time around. But I cannot wait to see what they have in store for us. As I said, it is great to have you back. But if you're just joining us, if you're not super familiar with what the ESL Mobile Open is all about, basically, it's an opportunity for you to get involved in the world of mobile esports. If you've always thought about maybe taking the plunge into the world of competitive, well, this is really your chance because there are a lot of mobile gamers in the United States, Ferrum. In fact, there are over 200 million mobile gamers in the United States alone, and we have had over 1 million entrants so far in the ESL Mobile. That's a crazy number.
It really is, and these players have gone all the way through the qualifiers, and we have made it all the way to the top 4 who are going to be racing today, so we can see who will be crowned the champion of ESL Mobile Open Season 5.
Oh, yes, indeed. Hundreds of thousands of players, in the time trials, in the game, trying to get this spot, but we only have 4 players left, and like you said, only one will walk away with the trophy and the title of Season 5 champions. But let's take a look at these players. Let's see who's going to be competing today. Let's take a look at our bracket and break it all down. We're going to have 4 amazing matches in store for you today. 2 semifinals, a 3rd place match, and then, of course, our grand finals. But what I love about this Ferrum, is while Elite Joe is back, surprise, surprise, we have a lot of new faces here as well.
We do. We've got Lewis X, who is also from Mexico, along with Elite Joe. And then we've got Wild Hare and Arclight. And I know all of these players are extremely competitive. They've worked their way all the way up to this point. And so I really think this one is going to be crazy.
It is indeed, but you saw it there up at the top of your screen, that first semifinal matchup, Wild Hare taking on Arclight. These are 2 players who, like you said, have put in the work. They have grinded out these races to get themselves in the position to get here, and they are going to need to do about as close to a flawless race as physically possible if they want to walk away with the win. I actually got a chance to sit down and talk to Wild Hare earlier and get his thoughts going into these matches. Let's take a look. So I'm here with Wild Hare going into these final races. How are you feeling? And more importantly, how did you feel when you found out that you qualified for our Season 5 finals?
I was excited for my first ESL experience in this game. In fact, my first experience in this game for esports. So was really fun.
Yeah, because you competed with us all the way back in Season 1. You placed top 16. What changed between then and now that allowed you to place here in the top 4? Have you been looking at the game differently? Have you been practicing more?
Yeah, my friend from Best Club in iOS platform helped me with this, showed me how to play. Yeah.
As you put in, again, the additional practice and stuff like that as well, because obviously...
Yeah, sure.
Because you're going up against a lot of experienced players. Again, Elite Joe is back, of course, has been in all of these different finals of events. Looking at your competition, are you nervous at all, or are you feeling confident?
So I'm nervous about races because I have hard opponent for this race. It's Arclight. He win me in competitions for equally.
Yeah, obviously, again, you're playing against a lot of the other top racers going into this. But again, It all comes down to just not making a lot of these mistakes and sort of keeping the nerves in check. Because I notice a lot of times really it just comes down to which racer can make fewer mistakes. Thank you so much, Wild Hare, for sitting down, chatting with me going into this grand finals, and best of luck in your races.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I mentioned it there in the interview, the idea of jitters. Obviously they're not going to be on a big stage. They do get to play from the comfort of their home. So hopefully that makes a little bit of a difference because, we have seen at past events, again, playing in these big arenas and stuff, nerves definitely played a factor. Do you think it'll play as much of a factor here for him?
Probably not quite as much, but I do know that this is a very big deal for all of these players, and especially for Wild Hare, since he made it to the top 16, I think it was back in Season 1, and he's practiced and practiced since then to be able to make it all the way to the top 4 here. So he's got a lot, but I think he's going to do quite well.
Yeah, obviously he's got that experience with the game, and he's shown that improvement all the way back from the beginning of 2019 here, of course, to Season 5. Do you have any predictions, though? Wild Hare, Arclight, is there a player you're leaning more towards?
Out of these two, I'm not entirely sure. I know that both of these players are very great players. If I had to say, I would lean slightly more toward Arclight, but I would not at all underestimate Wild Hare either, given that he's gone so far up through at this point.
Yeah, I mean, in the research that I've done, I think this is going to be one of the closest matches we've ever seen. I think it is going to be a real back and forth battle, and I don't want to keep the fans waiting any longer. I want to get us into these races and start things off here for the Season 5 finals. Ferrum, let's get these races underway. Let's get going and starting things off right. Let's get into it.
So first of all, we've got Wild Hare and Arclight competing on 1,000 Minarets, one of many... Oh my goodness. Whoa, Arclight. So they took the same route at the beginning, but Arclight, he went a little bit too far to the right, I think. He bounced off the building. And this has put him quite a bit behind, and Wild Hare is just taking the lead very early in this race.
I cannot believe it. That was absolutely, it's like he just, we're gonna have to look back at that in the replay, I'm sure, because that was wild. Blink and you miss it. All of a sudden, Arclight is leaps and bounds behind Wild Hare here, but as much as we've seen some races be determined by a single crash like this, it is not over until it is over. Wild Hare still needs to race about darn near perfect to walk away with the checkered flag on this one.
That is definitely true. Wild Hare, if he goes the same route, he could have the same mistake on the second lap. We don't know at this point. Anything could happen. But I think if I were Wild Hare, I would try to play it as safe as I could and not do a lot of risky strategies, because if he is able to not make any mistakes, he's probably got it in the bag at this point. Although Arclight is catching up.
That's actually one thing I'm definitely noticing as well. The distance between them is closing pretty steadily here. Arclight, I think, realizing needs to push the pace, take some of those riskier strategies like you mentioned before to try and make it up.
Does that correctly this time.
Ooh, and he gets the perfect bounce to jump. Wheels barely touching the ground on this one, and he's actually going to go through the pyramid as well, which you mentioned before is a little bit riskier.
Yes, it's a little bit riskier, but I think it's also a little bit faster, and that's one thing that I predicted we'll probably see quite a bit in the races throughout this stream. I think the players who maybe have had a mistake or whatever toward the beginning of the race, they will most likely do more things riskier later in the races, and who knows, I think a lot of them are probably going to pay off.
I mean, at this point, you're in the semifinals. Only a few more matches stand between you and that trophy. It's time to put it all on the line. There's no time to play it safe at this point, unless you're in the lead and you feel that you might throw it all away.
Yes, there's a lot of weight on the shoulders for these people, but Wild Hare, he manages to take it to the finish line, doing a few 360s in celebration as he finishes in first place in the first of our 3 matches with these players.
For sure. I mean, race number 1 in the books now for Wild Hare, and really, he just kind of did his thing. I mean, Arclight stumbling. I don't want to say at the starting line, but basically was at the starting line. It was the very first ramp. I hope we get a chance with our Xperia highlights at the end to take a look back at that, because I want to see that again, because it looked like he just, like you said, just bounced off the wall like we were playing ping pong or something. I don't even know what was going on there. But either way, Wild Hare kept those nerves under control, stayed calm, cool, and collected, and just played his race and was able to walk away with the win in race number 1. But I just want to get into our next race. I want to see what Arclight can do if he can take us to a race number 3. Ferrum, let's go.
All right, so we're starting off with them right next to each other again. I think this is on Pearl of the Orient, a track on Shanghai. This one here, it is a little bit straighter, I believe, than Thousand Minarets. There are going to be a lot of sections where they're going to be able to take full... Oh my goodness, Arclight, he wrecks on the barrier between the two routes here. So now it's up to Wild Hare at this point to play it safe for the rest of the race again. And Arclight, who knows, he might do something to just pull it out again, though.
I cannot believe it. Another stumble early on for Arclight. And again, nerves have got to be playing a factor here in this one, because again, keep in mind, players, as they're qualifying for this, they're doing it in time trials. They don't have that opponent there next to them, and maybe just a threat of potentially wrecking or getting knocked in the air caused that little mistake. But Wild Hare is going wild right now, pulling out to a lead, but Arclight is going to do everything he can. You can see that one on the screen up in front of you. He is trying to catch up, and he is moving quick for him.
Yeah, Wild Hare, he's really living up to his name here, but Arclight, he's catching up a little bit here, as we can see going into the second lap and around these turns here. I think Arclight is probably going to try to take these ramps just as much as he can to be able to get as much momentum as possible to catch up, because Wild Hare does look like he's stumbling a little bit. Oh my. Then Arclight passes him around that turn there. Wild Hare had a little bit of a stumble back there on the same place that Arclight did at the beginning of the first lap.
That's absolutely wild. That split going between the overpass and the underpass. That time around, Arclight took the lower route and was able to get right past Wild Hare. And now the tables have turned. Wild Hare is the one who made that small mistake. And Arclight, despite wrecking early, has had such a clean race so far. Other than that one misstep, he has continuously not only clawed his way back, but now surpassed Wild Hare. And now this might be Arclight's race to win.
Yes, and Arclight, he's had an amazing second lap here to pull out the victory with, although Wild Hare not too far behind. And Arclight, he wins this one. That was crazy. It went back and forth so many times in that race.
I'm a little bit mind blown, because I was looking at the two screens, and side by side, you can really get a good sense of sort of how fast both of these players are going. And it just felt like Arclight was just being able to maintain that top speed a little bit better. His nitro control, the way he took those corners, and particularly other than that first jump, the way he was taking them looked really darn solid. I think that's why he was able to sort of pull ahead. But that little stumble from Wild Hare, though, and that one spot on the track, really giving those players trouble.
Yeah, that's right. There's two ways you can go, to the left or to the right there, and there's just that little thing in the middle where if you don't make it to one side or to the other, you're going to hit that. And I think that's what both of them did in this race. Yeah, which is crazy.
Absolutely wild. I'm going to keep saying that because Wild Hare's in this race. And before we get into our third and final race of this match, I want to remind everybody watching at home, this is win or go home at this point. You are going to have a chance to play in that third place match, but there's no lower bracket. It is win, go on to the grand finals, or lose, and you are out. That is it. As we get into our third and final race of this match, our first semifinal, the winner will go on to our grand finals. It all comes down to this, Firam.
Yes, we are now in the U.S. Midwest. Wild Hare and Arclight both taking a speed trick at the beginning, running along the rails to give themselves some airspeed. It looks like, though, Arclight has pulled quite a bit ahead toward the beginning here. Let's see if he can maintain this lead throughout the entire race.
And he was able to ride the rail there just a little bit longer. Thought he was on a skateboard there for a second. But as you said, being able to get those little speed tricks out and looking so solid now.
Wild Hare.
Taking these ramps beautifully. Wait.
Yeah, Wild Hare, he went a little bit too far in that the turn back there and had to go onto the lower section, giving Arclight an even bigger lead in this race. He might just come back completely from that first one.
And Wild Hare, he's totally lost all of his nitro. His boost is pretty much non-existent there. He's finally able to get it back with the shockwave off the jump, but that was massive. And oh my goodness, I can see it starting to fall apart here for Wild Hare, not taking these turns necessarily, I think, how he wants to. And Arclight, who already had a strong start, is now looking almost unstoppable here in this race.
Yes, it's crazy. Arclight, he knows he's got it in the bag if he just plays it safe. See, he doesn't even take that rail thing back there because he knows that could be risky. That could cause him to wreck, and then it would be over for him. But no, he's playing it safe. He wants this victory here.
I mean, yeah, he wants to secure his spot in the grand finals. The only way that Arclight, I think, gives up this lead at this point is if he wrecks, as if he makes that critical unforced error. And that's not what he's looking to do right here. Looking to just keep that wall ride going, maintaining that speed. Oh, Wild Hare with that massive air as well. I don't think that's what he wanted to be doing at all. And now he's going into the low ground again. Oh, man, not taking the same route as Arclight. And I think it's working out a lot better here for Arclight.
Oh yes, Arclight, and then he is coming up to some of the final turns. Now I know this section here might get some people, but Wild Hare, he's going around the turns with a 360. That allows you to get a bit around the turns faster, but then Arclight, he shockwaves up the final bump to come in first place in the final one of our first 3 matches here.
Oh my goodness. Arclight, you kind of called it coming on into this. You're like, oh, I don't know, might have to give the slight edge here. He looked so solid because even in that first race, after that mistake, he was able to claw his way back. We saw it again in race number 2, but that time he was actually able to get back ahead. And then in race number 3, making all the right choices. I could kind of see Wild Hare, the confidence getting a little bit shaken in that third and final race. I think he sort of knew he was out of it at that point, not quite able to claw his way back. But in either case, really, really solid race from both of them, taking us all 3 games. Let's take a look back with our Xperia highlights, though. Firam, walk us through this, because that was a really, really solid opener.
So in this first race here, we had this section at the beginning here where they both go up these ramps, and then Arclight makes the critical error in this first place and goes over to the left, just completely wrecks on here. And then in the second race, they're both neck and neck toward the very beginning. But this time, he goes up a little bit too high, I think, and goes and wrecks on the middle section right there. But then he's able to come back in this race and then just completely bypass Wild Hare back there around that turn to come into first place in this race. And from here on out, he just needed to play it safe. And then at the end of this race here, he goes up this final ramp after Wild Hare's little mistake back there to come in first.
Really, really
some crazy
solid.
Races.
Crazy races, because each one sort of had that defining, or 1 or 2 sort of defining moments where we're going to be able to look back and go, ah, yes, that first opening wreck, or that wreck in race number 2. And that's really what it's going to come down to. I talked about it in the interview. I'm going to keep continuing to talk about it, is the idea of just trying to make fewer and fewer mistakes. Thank you so much, Firam, with that Xperia highlight. Really, really solid performance there from both of those players. Before we get on to our next race, I need to give a huge shout out, of course, the Xperia and Sony, the official mobile partner of the ESL Mobile Open, been joining us for Season 5, and I've been having an absolute blast using the Xperia 1. And now, of course, the Xperia 1 Mark II is out. You can get your hands on it. They have taken a lot of the feedback from the community, and this phone, well, it's doing a lot of things right, to say the least. It's still got that 21:9 cinema-wide display, but it's got a better processor, better battery, and hey, if you want a headphone jack, it's got one of them as well. So thank you so much to Xperia for joining us once again here for the ESL Mobile Open, joining us for the finals. And of course, if you guys want to get involved with Season 6, if you want to compete in the next season of the ESL Mobile Open, if you want to see yourself up here getting casted by us, walking away with some prize money, the prestige, and the trophy, well, you can do that because signups for Season 6 are live. Exclamation point sign up in the chat. Go over, find out all the info, all the amazing games we have coming back in Season 6. Definitely go check that out after we finish crowning a champion here, because you guys are not going to want to miss these races. And we are going to have our second semifinal up next. Oh my goodness. Firam, we just get to keep the action rolling. No breaks here, only games, only races. And this time, it's the Battle of Mexico as Luis is taking on Elite Joe.
And Elite Joe, he's one of the ones, he was in, I think, he was in like 3 of the previous seasons.
Yes.
He won Season 2 and 3, stumbled a bit in Season 4, but we'll have to see if he's able to come back here to make it to the semifinals.
Yes, indeed. Elite Joe, of course. The second we opened up the tournaments to all of North America, he was able to compete in Season 2, won at the Barclays Center, won again at DreamHack Atlanta, but stumbled last season, like you mentioned. We'll see. He's coming back looking for a little redemption, but first, of course, he's got to go up against Luis 6. And like I said, his fellow compatriot from Mexico, who is super excited to be involved with the ESL Mobile Open. I got a chance to interview him earlier. Let's take a look at that. I'm here with Luis going into our final games here for the ESL Mobile Open Season 5 Finals. Hola! How are you feeling going into today's games?
Me siento emocionado porque es la primera vez que participo en este torneo que se llama ESL y más por el hecho de que me voy a enfrentar por segunda vez en un torneo así contra Elite Joe. Es lo que me pone más nervioso.
This is exciting. I'm excited to be going into this tournament. Most importantly, because I'm going to face Elite Joe for the second time, and that's what is making me a little nervous.
So obviously there have been, hundreds of thousands of people who have, attempted to qualify to make it here to our grand finals. How did you feel when you found out that you had made it back once again?
Pues me sentí bastante bien, la verdad. No esperaba calificar en segundo lugar porque habían jugadores bastante buenos y el hecho de quedar en segundo puesto debajo de Elite Joe significa mucho.
I didn't really think that I would be second place because there were a lot of good players in the tournament, and to rank second behind Elite Joe, that means a lot just because obviously he's a good player.
Yeah, really, you guys seem to be going back and forth. How does it feel knowing that you're competing up against another player from Mexico here, going back into this next stage of the competition?
Pues bastante bien, la verdad. Después de todo, sabemos que un mexicano va a llegar a la final y cualquiera de los dos, el que gane, para mí me pone contento eso.
And he feels really good about that. He knows that at least no matter what happens, a Mexican player is going to win the top prize. Despite anything that happens, he's going to be really happy.
Awesome. Yeah, you're absolutely right. No matter what one of you guys is going for, that's absolutely great to hear. Congratulations once again, making it to our finals, and best of luck in your races.
Muchísimas gracias, la verdad. No puedo evitar estar nervioso. El hecho de enfrentar a Elite Joe y luego, en caso de que le gane, enfrentar a alguien, uno de los competidores de ellos, me pone aún más nervioso.
He says, "Thank you so much. I can't help being nervous going against Elite Joe, of course. And then even if I beat Elite Joe, then the fact that of having to go against whoever is next is obviously something that makes me nervous. But he's excited."
Awesome. Thank you so much for the interview. And I personally, I would be nervous too, but I just have to watch and spectate, and I can't wait to see these games.
Perfecto. Agradezco que lo vean. Y muchas gracias a todos los que me siguen y me apoyan, y un saludo a todos.
Perfect. I can't wait. And thank you to everybody who supports me and is watching along.
Well, you heard it there. Maybe a little bit of nerves going into this, but I also got a chance to sit down with Elite Joe, and let's see what he had to say about this match as well. I am here with Elite Joe, back again for another finals. No surprise to anybody. How did you feel knowing that you'd made it back to another Mobile Open finals?
Me siento con gran emoción, con ansias de volver a competir como las ocasiones anteriores y pues a ir con todo esta vez.
I'm super excited to come back again. Looking forward to compete.
It's great to have you back once again. You were our champion in seasons past, but had some stumbles last season in season 4. What are you doing this time? What are you changing up to come back and take back your trophy?
Vale, algo que yo noté es que tenía varios problemas, ya sea por el momento y el Wi-Fi y luego el teléfono con fallas. Ahora mismo que tengo ahora el nuevo teléfono, he practicado bastante, además de ahora tengo los 60 FPS y me ando acostumbrando. He entrenado mucho estos días.
I noted that I had a lot of issues in the moment the last time around, and including some Wi-Fi issues. But now that I have the new phone, I've been practicing a lot, including having the 60 frames per second. So again, practicing on the new phone has been super helpful.
Oh, that's awesome. Obviously, really great to hear, having the technology in your hands, being able to practice with it really will go a long way. And of course, you're going up against Luis in your matchup, the two of you here representing Mexico. How do you feel about that, knowing that you guys are going to take each other on to start things off?
La verdad con eso me siento emocionado porque ya tuvimos un enfrento anteriormente, hace 2 años, y me siento muy feliz de que otra vez volver a competir con él y estoy emocionado que también los dos representando a México y no sé, esperemos que hagamos una gran batalla él y yo y a ver quién llega a la final y esperemos podamos seguir representando a México.
I'm excited. We had a competition against each other, or we competed against each other 2 years ago. So this is not the first time that we're going in at it. But we're excited to compete, and we'll see who wins and gets the opportunity to represent Mexico.
I love it. And that was pretty much exactly the same response that he gave us there. No matter who's sort of winning, somebody from Mexico is going to be advancing on, and that's obviously really great to hear. Overall, though, looking to the finals, is this the time? Are you coming back? Are you going to be our champion once again?
Obviamente no quiero, después de la temporada pasada, de lo ocurrido, practicado mucho mentalmente, ya sea también obviamente del juego, y sí, quiero también mi corona de regreso, y espero se pueda lograr, y a seguir con las victorias, y obviamente con el apoyo de toda mi familia, obviamente, la verdad. También me ha ayudado mucho estos días y bueno, desde siempre. Y la verdad lo hago también por todos ellos y obviamente también por mí, pero también por todas las personas que me han apoyado. La verdad, los aprecio mucho.
Yeah, he's going to practice a lot and prepare himself mentally. You just keep on winning and getting those wins under his belt. Most importantly, having the support of his family has helped a lot in these last few days. He does it for them, of course, for himself, but the support of his family, his fans, and the people who follow him has been something that he enjoys and appreciates.
That is absolutely great to hear, and I cannot wait to see how these races go. Best of luck.
Gracias,
Well, you heard it there. Doing it for the family, doing it for the fans. I love it. I've had such a fun time watching him over these last few seasons. But as much as I love hearing from the players, I also want to see what they can do with their racing. Before we get into this, do you have a little bit of a prediction for us? Luis, Elite Joe, which way you leaning?
I think both of these players have a lot on their shoulders for this one because Luis X he's going up against one of the two-time champion of season 2 and season 3. But then you got to think also Elite Joe, he's got those 2 seasons under his belt, stumbled a little bit in season 4, and he's got a lot on him to come back in season 5. I would probably give the slight edge to Elite Joe. He's probably been practicing super hard, but then Luis X, because he's knowing he's going to be facing Elite Joe, he's probably tried all sorts of stuff for this.
All right, not a very definitive answer, but I don't blame you because I don't know who's going to come out on top either. You know what? Let's just find out by watching some sick races. Let's get into it. Our second semifinal matchup. The winner of this will go on to face Arclight in our grand finals. Let's get things started, Firam.
Yes, they both drift at the beginning, and then one of them, he 360s right next to him. I do not know if that was intended to be a knockdown or not. In any case, Luis X is able to get ahead of Elite Joe at the very beginning of the race, both taking a slightly riskier route toward the beginning, but I do not blame them. This is the first one. They have a lot to show.
They do indeed. Elite Joe in the red car, Luis in the blue. Just barely able to maintain that lead right now, but it's so interesting to see when these two players are this close, just how much they mimic each other's motions, these mirrors, because these players have got this down to, I kid you not, nanoseconds. That's how close some of these races get, definitely at least milliseconds, and we've seen it come down to the wire here in the ESL Mobile Open, but Elite Joe not quite able to close this lead yet.
They really do, but you also got to think they have 2 laps to go, or 1 lap to go, 2 laps in the entire race. And Elite Joe has been like just 100 feet or so ever around behind Luis X this entire race. If Luis X makes any mistake at all, I can imagine Elite Joe might just go ahead and pass him. He's going to be looking for any opportunity he can get here.
They are indeed. And of course, we haven't really talked about it a lot so far today, but you want to tell us and the audience a little bit more about this car they're using today.
Yes, of course. So the W Motors Lycan Hypersport, it's a mid-tier S-Class car. It has very good drifting, as you can see around these turns here. It's a very fast car. It can just get up to a very high speed on the straights. One of the things that players have to keep in mind, though, this car is challenging in the fact that its nitro might not last quite as long as some of the other cars in the game. And so that is one thing that I think they might struggle a little bit with throughout these races.
Yeah, that nitro efficiency is something we're going to be keeping an eye on here because, as you mentioned, they're going to be burning through it real quick. But that was just Luis right there at the end. No questions asked. He got out to the lead early, maintained it the entire time. And at this level of play, that's kind of to be expected. And that's what a race looks like when nobody makes any major mistakes. That was about as close to perfect as these two players could get. Elite Joe falling slightly behind early. There was one of those turns. I think he mismanaged his drift a little bit, didn't get the wall ride quite correct, and that really cost him there over the course of that race. But Luis taking game number 1. We saw it last season. Titans can bleed. Elite Joe is now down. He's got to win 2 races back to back. Do you think he can do it, Firam?
I think he definitely can. I mean, in that race, it was so close. Both of them played extremely well. The only reason that Elite Joe fell behind because of the first turn. The rest of the race was super close.
It was indeed, and I expect that to sort of be indicative of what the rest of not only this match, but this tournament as a whole is going to look like. Let's get into our next race. Players are ready to hit the track. Let's get this going.
Yes, so our second race between Luis X and Elite Joe is on Rome, both taking the barrel at the beginning, but Luis X again pulling slightly ahead. Let's see if he's able to maintain this lead throughout the race, because we saw in the first matches, things can happen on the second. Oh no,
Oh no!
Luis X, he wrecked in the middle of the track right there, causing Elite Joe, he's able to get way ahead at this point. But Rome, it's a track with a lot of twisty places when anything can really happen. So Elite Joe has to be on top of his game here.
He does indeed. This is so reminiscent of game number 2, race number 2 from our first match with Arclight hitting that central barrier at the split. And like you said before, this particular track has so many twists and turns. You need to be on your A game, constantly making sure that you are checking yourself so that you don't wreck yourself in this particular situation. Luis is now pretty far behind, a reversal of our first map, but Elite Joe needs to make sure he keeps up that speed. He lost a little bit of it there.
That's true. He did lose a little bit, and Luis X is catching up. Now, one other thing to note is that this track, it has some of the narrowest sections in the game. So if it does get to a point where Luis X catches up, there could be some knockdowns involved because they'd both be super close to the edges of the track. But it looks like Elite Joe is able to maintain a very strong lead throughout the entire race so far.
He has indeed, a little bit of a misstep there from Luis at the start of this race. And actually another one there as well. Oh yeah, that's definitely going to be all she wrote. That is going to be Elite Joe walking away with the win in this second race. Wave the checkered flag. This one is done. Put a fork in it. And this is really just a solid showing from Elite Joe. Just showing that you have to play perfect against the best of the best, because any slip up, and I mean potentially a literal slip up this time if you're playing tap to drive, can be the difference between victory and defeat.
Yes, it's crazy. Every little second counts in these races. We saw in the first one when they both play perfectly, or as we saw in this one with just the split second turning one way or the other could mean the difference. And Elite Joe is able to take it in this race. And so now we'll have to see this final rematch here between the two.
And my big question mark is, we talk about the idea of the mental game, because a lot of this, the mental game really does come into play, especially in those early sections where you're potentially bumper to bumper. Is this going to impact Luis going into this final one? Is he going to second guess himself after wrecking twice in that last map? That's the question mark. That's what I need to have answered in our second semifinal. Let's get into our third race here. The winner, of course, will go on to our grand finals to take on Arclight. And well, the losers just going home, going to be fighting for third. Let's get into this, Firam.
Yes, now we've got the Himalayas, both of them going around the turns the same way at the beginning. We're going to see probably a lot of very similar plays throughout this race, both going up this ramp and flat spinning, but Elite Joe has fallen slightly behind, but I think he's managing to catch up a little bit, having a bit of a better speed perhaps on some of the ramps here.
Yeah, I know, not actually opting to cut that flat spin a little bit early, making up a little bit of that distance. And one thing I do want to know, we've seen this in races 1, 2, and 3. There ain't going to be clean racing in this one. Both players have taken the opportunity to try and demo the other when they can. Counter shockwaves going out in both of those situations to make sure, at least in this race, to make sure that they did not get taken down, because that's something I want to remind the folks at home. When the players qualify for this semifinals and finals, they're doing it in time trial. They're doing it just themselves against the clock. This is an opportunity, though, for them to play against another person in the track, and they can demolish each other. They can knock each other out.
Yes, this is absolutely crazy. Both of these players, this is probably going to be one of the most competitive races that we see here because they both have a lot on the line. Luis X, though, I can imagine he's probably pretty nervous in there in first place. If he's able to play it safe and keep it, he's going to be able to make it to the finals. But Elite Joe, not too far behind.
Yeah, but the lead is actually starting to extend a little bit here for Luis. And it's so interesting. He's taken the lead in all 3 races. Elite Joe playing a little bit more defensively at the start of all of these races may be costing him here, or it might cost him here because these are only 2 laps. We're actually getting down there, Firam, and Luis is still in the lead.
It just might. I mean, Luis X, he's just making his lead greater and greater throughout this race. Elite Joe stumbling a bit back there. The little 360 he did, I think, may have cost him a little bit more time. Luis X now just needs to go up this final ramp, which he does without a problem, and he's able to come in first here.
Beautiful play from Luis. I cannot believe it. Gets out ahead in all 3 races, stumbles a little bit in race number 2, but able to take down Elite Joe. Oh my goodness, what a showing here from him. Beautiful play. I am really, really impressed because Elite Joe, if you would have shown me this race and you turned the names off, I probably would have told you they were reversed because this harkens back to the play style of Elite Joe from seasons past. He would get out to that early lead, he would play aggressive off the start, and then he would just hold on to that lead. And it was an entire series after series of players just trying to catch him. But he was like, you know, the guy with the lucky charms. They just could never seem to do it. But this time it was Luis who got out to the start, was able to maintain that lead, and he's knocked Elite Joe out. Elite Joe will be able to play again for our third place game, which is something we'll get to see him again. And actually, that's something that I really, really like that we do here for him. Give these players another chance to compete, you know, and get shown off on stream.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, in these races, Elite Joe, he was playing it a bit safer toward the beginning of all of them, but I think that really did cost him in the end. So I'm wondering if in this match between him, I think he's probably going to play it a little bit more risky toward the beginning.
I wouldn't be surprised. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we need to take a look back at that second, I should say, semifinal with our Xperia highlights. Firam, let's take a look back at that race between Luis and Elite Joe. It was exciting, to say the least.
Yeah, so in this first one here, just because of this first turn, Luis X is able to get ahead just by mere meters and is able to stay ahead for the entire race. And then in the second race here, Luis X runs into the middle of the track there. Elite Joe is able to pull ahead and continue to stay ahead throughout the entire race at this point. Luis X makes another little mistake there. And then in the final race, they were both neck and neck throughout almost the entirety of it, almost mimicking each other in the movements throughout the entire thing, both shockwaving toward the beginning here. And then Luis X is able to just pull slightly further ahead throughout the race and is able to come in first. Another example of very good driving throughout the entire race.
Yeah, and again, if you're just sort of a casual fan of Asphalt, if you're just seeing it for the first time, maybe the third time, that was very specific. For the first time, there were so many small nuanced things that these players were doing, and we're going to try and point out as many of them as possible. The idea of maintaining top speed and keeping up your boost and your nitro, all of course, while putting in those extra little tricks we saw there, like riding on the rail and doing those wall rides as well. Lots of cool things we're going to try and point out as we go, because we only have 2 more races, or 2 more matches left, I should say. Wild Hare versus Elite Joe, determining who gets that 3rd place spot. Of course, it does make a difference in terms of prize money. And then, of course, we are going to have our grand finals. Arclight taking on the We 6. We're going to have ourselves a new champion here. I am so excited. I can't wait. I don't know about you, Firo.
Me too. I mean, I think Elite Joe, I would give him the slight edge here in this final one, just because I think he's going to be extra sure to just play as hard as he can here. But Wild Hare, again, he played extremely well too.
I agree. I think we're going to see, I don't think Elite Joe really gets angry, but the closest he gets to angry, that's what we're going to be seeing here. Let's get into this next match. Let's take a look at this next best of 3. Wild Hare here in the... Oh, actually, I love the colors of these cars. Also, just note, like, the graphics in this game. Can we just, like, talk about that for a second? Because I forget all the time that they are playing on phones. Literally, like, if you were to tell me this was on, like, a top-of-the-line gaming PC, I would believe you. But you're playing on phones, Farum.
Yes, this is crazy. Some of the best graphics you'll probably see in a mobile racing game. We could see at the beginning there, they took different routes, but again, have managed to get very close to each other. Neither of them opting to take the pyramid route, which I think is something that they realize, because it is definitely a more top speed oriented car, in which case it's definitely better to take the straighter routes most of the time. And Wild Hare slightly behind Elite Joe. I mean, Elite Joe, he made sure to get ahead at the very beginning here.
He did indeed. This was the real difference maker going into this race. And now Wild Hare, we'll see if it's an example of the tortoise in the hare, except the tortoise has got a jetpack on his back for this one. Thus the hare is going to have to try and catch on up. We do know, of course, who wins that race in the end. We'll see if Elite Joe is going to be able to live up to the story. Both players here opting to take slightly different approaches to that turn. One of them opting to go for the wall ride to maintain speed. The other one going for drift to try and build up nitro. Talk to us a little bit about these different strategies and how players use and employ them.
Yeah, so around a lot of curves, especially if you're in a fast car like this one, it is better to do a wall ride, because drifting does slow you down. Now on that 360-degree turn back there, wall riding, it actually makes you slow down rather than helping you to go faster. So I think Wild Hare actually lost a little bit of ground there. And Elite Joe now, he has to make sure to not, go off the side or anything like that. Because you have to remember, this is a track, just like the first race, with those billings and those barrel rolls through that section there. And Wild Hare, he runs into a bit of a problem back there.
Oh my goodness, yes he does. He's got to put the pedal to the metal, but the speed just ain't there. He's trying to ride the rails a little bit to try and build up some of that speed, but he is now just so far behind. You can't even see Elite Joe. He's way off in the distance. He's pretty much got this one in the books. Just needs to make sure, like you said, just doesn't wreck. That's really what it comes down to when you build up this much of a lead. Run into that car for good measure. Just get out of the way. Let's do it. That is going to be the race in the bag. Elite Joe is able to get that first win in our first race. He is one step closer to that 3rd place spot. It's not the 1st place like he wanted, but that extra prize money sure feels good.
Oh yeah. And in this race especially, he nailed this one. Like, he was driving his very best, I could tell, in this one, because, like you were saying, as close to angry Elite Joe as you could probably get here.
For context, he's like the nicest guy you'll ever meet. I just saw him.
He really is.
We were at ESL 1 New York at the Barclays Center. He's just like wondering. He was just so excited to be there. And that's, of course, where he won his first championship. Not going to be able to walk away with the trophy this time around, but let's just see if he can at least walk away with this 3rd place spot. Let's get into our next race. Let's see if Wild Hare can take us to race number 3, or we'll see if Elite Joe can take it away one more time. And this time he's out in the lead to start again. And this is the Elite Joe we know, but they are side by side. Oh my goodness, here we go.
is they are right next to each other throughout the entire first bit. But Elite Joe, he's able to hold his shockwave longer, which allows them to build up to a higher speed, causing him to, again, be ahead toward the beginning of this race, opting to take the slightly straighter route off to the left, whereas Wild Hare takes the slightly riskier but perhaps faster route over to the right. That does allow him to catch up. Oh, and there's not quite a pass, but there is almost one. Wild Hare is catching up so close.
I love watching when these two players are so close. They're neck and neck, basically bumper to bumper, as Elite Joe is still able to maintain this lead, but just barely. And I love the fact that you're mentioning the idea of the players are going to take slightly different routes and variations on these tracks depending on what car they're using, because of course these cars all have different strengths and weaknesses.
Wild Hare, they both took a risky route. Elite Joe was able to pull it off, but Wild Hare, he goes a bit too high, I think, on the last ramp there, and that costs him a bit of the time. But we've still got the second lap left. I'll be interested to see at that end bit there, will Elite Joe go for that risky route, or will he take the safer route to the left? Because he knows, I mean, he's pretty far ahead at this point. If he doesn't make a mistake, he's got this in the bag.
He does indeed. So it's all going to be on Wild Hare now to try and catch up and hope, pray that Elite Joe is going to make an error. But I don't think that is going to happen. I think that would be pretty unlikely. Elite Joe, we have seen it time and time again. The clutch factor is real. Wild Hare, first time here in the finals, has put on a stellar performance, but I'm not sure it's going to quite be enough. Because I want to remind you, you may see them in this races, in these races, you go, wow, like Elite Joe looks really solid. Keep in mind, hundreds of thousands of entrants. That's how many people competed in these time trials to try and make it here to the finals. Wild Hare made it here as well, but today it just wasn't quite enough as Elite Joe is able to get the win, taking that final third place spot. Wild Hare will be in fourth, but still making it to the top four at all, that is a crazy accomplishment.
It really is. I mean, coming from all those hundreds of thousands of players, you got to remember all of these players, they made it into the top two on their respective platforms, but playing against another player can be quite a bit different than just playing in an event. You've got them to worry about, and you've got a lot on your shoulders really here.
Oh yeah, the pressure is very real. And it's nice because the players might be able to play from home. They don't have to be up on some big stage with the crowd cheering them on. I mean, some players, they play a little bit better, but for a lot, the nerves are definitely a factor in either case. Grats to both of these players. They put on an amazing show. And I want to take another look back with our Xperia highlights because Ferrum, despite the fact that it was only 2 races, those were some clean performances from Elite Joe.
They were in both of these. Elite Joe got ahead at the beginning of the race. Then Wild Hare, he runs into a problem in the same section, but on the reverse version of this track as Arclight did in that first race there. They gave Elite Joe the victory in that race, and in this one, they were neck and neck almost all the way through, but again, able to get ahead at the very beginning. And then Wild Hare, he runs into a bit of a problem on this ramp, and falls off the track, and that gave Elite Joe the victory here. But both of them playing extremely well in both of these races.
Yeah, really solid performance there. Again, we're at the point of competition where the tiniest mistake is going to cost you, because in some situations we've seen it literally come down to milliseconds. Thank you so much, Ferrum, with our Xperia highlights for that third match. We've determined, who's in fourth. We determined who's in third. But second, and most importantly, first, our champion is still yet to be determined. Let's take a look back at our bracket one more time. Because next time we're going to see this, we're going to have somebody in that last final spot. Will it be Arclight? Will it be Luis? That is the big question here. Who is going to walk away as our Season 5 champion? If I can talk about it till the cows come home, but I feel like I just want to watch some races instead. Do you have any predictions going in to this final match?
I feel like both of these players are going to put their absolute best into this. I will say, though, given that the way that Lewis has driven in these, I feel like he's probably going to pull ahead at the beginning of a lot of the races. And we'll have to see if that pays off here.
Yeah, that's sort of where I was leaning as well. If you're able to take down Elite Joe that convincingly, and Arclight did stumble a few times. I think Arclight, like purely from a mechanics standpoint, did a lot of stuff that was able to allow him to catch up. We saw it in that second race, where he was able to overcome the deficit of wrecking himself. That is an accomplishment. But I think I might have to go with Luis. I think I might just have to here.
Me
The
too.
experience, the fact that he took down Elite Joe, I think that might have to be it. But you know what? We're going to find out right here, right now. Let's get into this next race. Let's crown ourselves a champion. The weekend is still young, but the games are ready to go. Firam, let's get into it.
And we are now on the Caribbean. This is one of the twistier tracks in the game, so a lot of turns that these players are going to have to navigate and figure out whether they want to wall ride or whether they want to drift around. And Luis X opts for a bit of a wall ride around here, but Arclight pulling out actually an early lead in this race.
Yeah, Arclight looking really solid there. Able to pull out to the lead, gets those flat spins down. And is still able to try and maintain this, but Luis still got him on the screen. This isn't some like massive early lead like we've seen in some of these other races. Luis still very much in the game in terms of catching up, but I'm actually so impressed with how Arclight has been able to take these corners. There is no hesitation. He has this route down pat.
Yes, they are both making it through with the greatest of ease. You can bet that these players probably practiced on a lot of tracks that they might have expected to see in here, and you can tell that that practice has definitely paid off. Again, Arclight opting to do a drift and shockwave back there, and Luis X doing the wall ride instead. Arclight just slightly ahead, but Luis X really not too far behind at all.
Oh,
There's almost a wreck. Wow.
Oh my goodness. Do a barrel roll, but actually complete your barrel roll. Also, for the record, those weren't actually barrel rolls. That's a whole other conversation. Anyway, that was almost disaster, but still the lead maintained by Arclight. You know, just nerves of steel right there, just iron in his veins as he continues to keep up the lead, keep up the momentum. Like I said, this is a well-oiled machine at this point, and Luis is just hoping for the worst for Arclight. You hate to think about it, but at this point, Arclight needs to make a huge mistake for Luis to pull out this victory.
Yes, but Arclight is still on the screen of Luis X. It's not as entirely far ahead as they were in some of the previous races. But you're right, Arclight, if he makes a mistake, definitely Luis X is going to be able to pull ahead, but Arclight seems to be driving flawlessly pretty much in this race, and was even able to pull out that lucky barrel roll back there and not wreck at that point. And he's able to pull even further ahead of Luis X toward the end of the race and take the victory.
Oh my goodness. Why did I ever doubt you, Arclight? Look, all I know is that was solid, because even if you don't wreck, that little bit of a mistake, sometimes we just see tilt players, and while they may not necessarily, physically tilt them in that situation, while we don't see them wreck in that exact instance, they tend to make a couple more little mistakes after that. But no, that was a hard reset. He looked basically as clean as he did the first half of the race. But really, I think the hallmark of the players that are able to win here, Firam, is get ahead early, don't make mistakes.
Yes, Arclight, he pulled ahead toward the beginning, and really, he maintained that throughout the race. And like you were saying, it didn't shake his nerves at all. That place where he nearly wrecked. I mean, he was able to pull out of that, and I think he may have played better after that than he did before even. He just kept extending his lead there.
Yeah, it was really, really impressive. We'll see if he's going to be able to do it on our next race, because, of course, reminding everyone, this is a best-of-5 finals, which means the first to 3 wins is going to be the victory. So, not totally against the wall yet is Luis here, but he's definitely got to step up in this next race. Let's see what these players can do as we get into the next one, because you know what? I harken back and think, there's no magic school bus action here. There's no getting messy. There's no making mistakes. You can make no mistakes. You have to be absolutely perfect. This is the grand finals, Firam.
You really have to be, and you can tell that these players are doing it, taking a route over to the right there. But then, Arclight taking a bit of a early lead after Luis pulls ahead at the very beginning of the race. I can imagine, this one might, oh my, they're both barreling oh no! Luis X.
Oh my goodness!
In the tunnel, he bounces up and just, he fell on his top.
That was wild. So he had so much momentum. He had so much speed with the barrel roll, but it kind of got out of control. And while he tried to bring it back under control, he landed, bounced, and smashed into the ceiling of the cave. I don't think I've actually ever seen that. That was pretty crazy. And now he is so far behind. We are looking at a kind of a similar situation to race number 1. Arclight now out in the lead, but this time it's not like he's still on the screen. It's not like he's, kind of attainable. He's just way out there now. Luis has got to play the race of his life.
Yes, he definitely does. And Arclight, he does as well at this point. He can afford to make some minor mistakes, but anything big, like say that happens to him, you know, he might not be able to come back from that, but it looks like he's able to make it through here without a problem. Luis X opting to take a safer route through there. A little bit surprising given that he is behind. You know, usually those behind, they do more risky things to be able to catch up. But I do not think he will run into the same problem here at this time, and he doesn't.
Yeah, that was actually sick, though. What was that? What kind of flip was that? I don't even know. Anyway, that was actually wild. Either way, Arclight is still out well to the lead. That's how you do a wall ride, maintaining that top speed, no problem. And that really, I think, has been the difference, is how Arclight has taken these corners. He knows when to drift. He knows when to wall ride. He knows when to boost. He knows when to get those shockwaves in, and he's got those flat spins when he needs them. This guy is just checking every single tick box on the test, and he's at this point, this rate, he's going to walk away with a perfect score.
And Arclight, he's staying so calm throughout these races as well. Anything that happens, it doesn't faze him. I mean, he just keeps on driving like nothing happened. And he realized that if he did make some sort of mistake, it can mean the difference. So he didn't, you know, he kept on going like he was before. He didn't let anything faze him. And I think that's probably what's giving him the victories here.
I could not agree more. The nerves of steel coming in from Arclight. I think at this point he realizes, look, I'm the player to beat. I have put up the scores. I've got the times. I know what I'm all about. And at this point, this is actually really interesting because you're now 2 races to 2 races to 0, I should say. Backs up against the wall. We saw Luis do something very interesting in that last race, was just he was behind, but he opted not to take the riskier route. At this point, Hiram, do you just throw that out the window? Do you play all risk, all reward? I think now's the time. Would you agree?
I definitely would. If I were in his situation, I mean, he could come back, but he's going to have to play extremely well in all of those for that to happen. I think he's just going to go all out in this next race. And I think that's probably what we're going to see here.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I also think the thing to note is, of course, is the players don't necessarily know what tracks they're going to be doing before they come into this. The idea of the practice and the routes and all that stuff as well. I think we're definitely seeing that a little bit here. Arclight, like I said before, looks like he had no hesitation at any point. It's just pure muscle memory as he goes into these races. And as we go into our third race, could potentially be our final one here, but I don't think so. I think Luis is going to give us a bit of a series here as we get into our third race. Let's see if he can pull this out, take us to race number 4, or if Arclight is going to seal the deal right here, right now.
And Luis X, I can imagine this race. There could definitely be some knockdowns taking place here because, you know, both of them have a lot on the line. Luis X able to take an early lead, but then Arclight getting slightly ahead. Oh, there was a knockdown. Luis X knocked down him on that ramp. I don't even think that was intentional, but wow, that has given Luis X. That's given Luis X a crazy lead at this point, although he has gotten a bit slowed down, and Arclight is catching up slightly. Wow.
Yeah, this is a little bit reminiscent to that race number 2 of that first semifinal when Arclight did wreck early, but was able to claw his way back into it. Luis, a little bit mismanagement in terms of the speed, but I agree. I think that was 100% intentional. All risk, all reward. Luis is going big here, and I love it. A lot of fans in the Asphalt community like clean racing. They like to see, you know, players respecting one another's personal, or the bubbles, which, again, in 2020, yes, please do that. But in this particular game, when you can wreck each other, when you can knock each other out as a caster, that is so exciting, and that's what I like to see. But hang on a second. Arclight, he's starting to close this gap for him.
He is, and Luis X, he has to be extra careful not to make mistakes at this point as well. And, you know, after that knockdown, Arclight, he could be looking for some revenge. So if he does catch up, we'll have to see, does he do that? Or does he just pass him and continue? Because Luis X, Arclight is catching up quite fast, I would say, to Luis X. Luis X goes a bit high on that barrel, and now they are just so close to each other at this point.
They are indeed. Slight variation in terms of the route right there. And Arclight, you continuing to catch up right now. This is going to be neck and neck as we're getting towards final portions of this race. Here we go, taking these corners. Arclight, hello. I see you, sir, right over the shoulder through the rear view mirror. Can you catch back up? Or will it be Luis able to take us to game number 4? It's going to come down to the wire. They are neck and neck, but Arclight is relentless. Hang on, pushes him out. I think he might have actually taken the lead right here. He goes on the inside. Yes, he does. The shockwave is there. Oh my goodness. He's pulled ahead in the lead. I cannot believe it. We are coming down to the wire, Fearum. This may actually be it. That's the finish line. That's the checkered flag. And it is Arclight, your Season 5 champion.
That was crazy. He made up that entire race after that knockdown, coming back in the second lap to pass him like in the final 15 seconds of the race. That was a crazy final race to this. Congratulations to Arclight.
What? I need to take a breath. I need to take a breather after that one. Hang on a second. Arclight, you absolute mad lad. That was so good. That was actually insane. Other than that first little, and that wasn't even like an unforced error. That was like a forced error. That was like Luis getting all up in his grill, all pun intended. That was just super, super solid racing from Arclight. And I think if there was any doubt about him coming into this, about whether or not he deserves to be, in this such a pool of top competitors, those haters are gone. That is just Arclight looking like an absolute champ. And he is our champion here. He walks away with the trophy. He walks away with the prize. So fantastic. Fearum, let's take a look back. Unfortunately, we only had 3 races, but at least they were 3 stellar ones. Let's take a look back with our Xperia highlights. Walk us through it.
So, in all of these races, Luis X and Arclight, they knew this is for the complete champion of this thing. But in this first race, they were both on the Caribbean, the first 2 here. And then Arclight, he almost lands on his top there, but is able to pull it out, continues racing well throughout this entire race, and then passes Luis X very close to the beginning of the second race. Then they both do some crazy spins in there. Arclight is able to come out of it, but Luis X, it just wasn't there at this point. And on the second lap, though, he was able to continue to go through. But then this third race, Luis X knocks him down. And yeah, Arclight, throughout the entire race, just manages to get closer and closer and closer, pulling ahead toward the very last second to come in and take the victory. And, the first 3 are all 3 of the final matches here. Like, Arclight, he drove so flawlessly in these. He had his mistakes, but he was able to come back from them like no other.
I think it was 99% excellent, 1% oof. And those oofs almost cost him, but they were so small in the scheme of things comparatively. Just really, really solid play from him. Thank you so much for those Xperia highlights, Fearum. And while I'm giving thank yous, while I'm giving shout outs, I need to give a huge shout out, of course, to the presenting partner of the ESL Mobile Open. I'm talking about AT&T, without whom none of this would be possible, helping to support not only the grassroots of mobile esports, but now at the top tier, watching these players who have ascended to new heights. I'm not just talking about going off those ramps. We have our new champion for season 5. And none of this would be possible without AT&T. So thank you so very much. Oh my goodness, Fearum. It has been another day. It has been another show. Mine's not done, but thank you so much for joining us, man. Getting your insight into this has been fantastic. Trying to read into the minds of what these players are doing has been great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it has been a blast today. I was so excited. And these players, it was so fun to watch all of their different, all their different tricks and everything that they did. It was so fun. Thanks again for having me on. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a blast. We have ourselves a new champion. Couldn't have done it without you, bud. Take it easy. Go enjoy the rest of your weekend. Oh my goodness. That's just the day getting started, team, because we have more amazing mobile esports action here on the channel. And if you want to get involved in season 6, if you look up at the screen, it's like, wait a sec, I can do that. I play my mobile games. I can get in. You can get involved. You do that right now. If you're in North America, ! Sign up into the chat, learn all about it. Multiple titles to get involved with. So even if you don't necessarily play Asphalt, there's a lot of great games going on. But I definitely recommend checking out Asphalt if you're able to. It is so much fun to pick it up. I look like a silly person because I don't do tap the drive. I'm like all over the place here. But yeah, I definitely recommend checking that out for sure. And of course, following us over on social media, !social in the chat. Stay up to date with all things we are doing here for the ESL Mobile Open. Over on Twitter in particular is a great way to get involved, or over on Instagram at ESL Mobile. Definitely recommend checking those out. But speaking of checking things out, stick around here because Clash of Clans is coming up soon. The final 2 teams for Clash of Clans out of the many hundreds that started at the beginning of Season 5 are now vying for that number 1 spot. A little bit of a change here. We're going from a first person, or I guess the third person view, to top down, but the action is still going to be intense. You do not want to miss it. We're going to hop onto a short break. When we come back, our Clash of Clans finals.
This is the ESL Mobile Open, presented by AT&T.